Hey guys, Hetero Sasha should be joining me in a minute. We're just gonna kind of go over stuff for the week of what's been going on. How you guys doing today? If the background noise around me is loud, let me know and I'll put my headset on. That might make it quieter. It's better at picking up things. How you guys all doing? I started it a little early because I'm not really good at the live thing yet, and I'm trying to get it all figured out. But I think I'm getting it. I just need to get him online, and then I'll be able to get him to join, and we'll be going back and forth. How you guys all doing tonight? How you guys doing? Like I said, Hetero Saucer should be here in a minute. I just set up the live to get it started. Once he gets here, I'll bring him in as a co-host. Nice. Is the weather in California hot as it is here in North Carolina? I'm just curious, can you guys hear like the air conditioner running behind me? Because if you can, I can put my headset on and it'll probably make it quieter. I don't know if my phone's picking it up or not. It is loud, we'll start for that. Is that any better? If not, I have one other thing I can try. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of crickets out here today. So how you guys all doing? We're probably going to go over like the Supreme Court decision that said that Trump's immunity some point.
Oh,
Hey, how's it going?
good. I don't know why they're not showing my picture.
Hold on a second. Drop out. Let me see if I can invite you as drop out and start a live, and then I think I can invite you as a co-host.
Okay.
I think we're figuring out how to get him up here where his face will be like as big as mine and things. I think once he starts a live, it'll work. Right now it just says offline, which I can plug in. Sorry guys, I'm new with this whole thing. I'll get better at it, I promise. Hetero Sasha, I think if you're in here, you need to start your own live, and then I can like merge it. To make you a co-host. I appreciate it.
There.
Hey, I can see you. I wonder how I'd make your face bigger.
That's fine. now I'm too big.
Now you know. Figure this out eventually.
All of a sudden, I'm feeling very bashful.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
I don't think I can make it like a split screen unless you start your own live and then I add you as a co-host.
Okay, let me try that.
Okay. Okay, I'm confused. Why won't it let me invite him? It says no co-host access. Weird. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Apparently, I don't know, he doesn't have enough followers or something to be a co-host, so I'm just gonna have to bring him up as a picture. Hopefully, he'll get my message soon. Sorry, like I said, I'll get better at this live thing. I'm kind of new at it still. So how you guys all doing tonight? Hopefully he'll be back in here in a minute. So how are you guys all doing tonight? Yeah, it won't let me co-host with him for some reason, so I'm just gonna have to try to bring him back as a guest. Uh, and then hopefully he'll be back in there in a second. Hi, Melanie. Yeah, I was trying to get him as like a co-host. It would be like a split screen instead of just him in a little box, but I don't know how to do all that. I think he's trying to figure it out on his end. Yeah, hopefully he'll be back here in a second. I'm sorry, guys. Like I said, I'll get better at this. What we should do about the Supreme Court, if we had Democrats who cared, they'd be talking about expanding the Supreme Court or just impeaching them. At this point, like, it's insane. Fever crack. That's a good answer. There's not a lot we can actually do about it, sadly. I don't know if he's like not getting my messages or what. He was just in here a second ago.
Want to try this again, or
Yeah, we're gonna have
this is totally fine for me. I'm just super interested to get to talk to you about this stuff because I've really enjoyed your perspective on all this, and let me see if I can get my face going again.
air conditioner on here. Just so I can.
Hold on, say that again.
Can you? There's an air conditioner. And I was like, put on.
It's
And I can kind of hear your microphone. Is there like a speaker or something?
No. Is it still sounding strange?
This is like in here.
Hold on, let me try joining again.
Is that better? Yeah, my hair's in my face now. Sorry about that.
There. Does it sound all right?
How's that? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, perfectly. I'm not bothering you.
I can still hear myself through your mic.
So I'm just using my phone.
Yeah, is there like something else now?
Did you hear yourself again?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have any sort of speaker going. I'm just using the phone.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, we're trying to get this figured out.
Was this happening last time?
I don't think so. It's very weird. I hear myself
It's not coming through on your live, at least.
Oh, really?
Is it the headphones perhaps? Here, I'm gonna mute. Keep speaking after I mute, okay?
Is there an echo now? Hey, maybe it was my headphones. That's weird.
It's not happening now.
No, I can't hear myself. Well,
You're good.
You want to try something? Somebody else plugged in.
My phone is not plugged in. I'm free balling it in a way.
Very weird.
Let me try to rejoin one more time.
Mute yourself. There should be a microphone above your head, at the top of your head. Okay, I'm just gonna say it then. I'm sorry for anyone who can hear me. He has to leave, post out of the app, and come back. He has to make sure there's nothing blocking his phone and that there's nothing blocking the way of his speak. It's something from his app that's from his side that's causing the echo. Also, anytime you have out of the water,
How's that? Oh, I didn't hear myself.
You can still hear yourself?
I said I didn't hear myself.
Okay, perfect. There's no echo.
Hey, yay, small miracles.
Right. On such a terrible day, right? We have to celebrate everything we can.
So what do you want to talk about first? The Supreme Court?
Well, the most interesting thing is I feel like a lot of people are getting the Trump executive privilege and presidential immunity thing wrong. There's actually a really interesting component to that. The court went through every single aspect of what he's being tried for. And at first they said the things that he did with the judiciary, all that kind of stuff was within his power, was part of his official power. But they very specifically said that the part of the criminal case that is about him calling the electors and saying, hey, can you find like 33,000 votes for me? They said, we don't think that is. And they're forcing the lower court judge to do a fact analysis of whether that actually is part of his immunity. But what I expect to happen is they'll do that analysis, and whichever way it goes, the other side will appeal it back to the Supreme Court, and they will make a decision. We have till January 20th if he gets elected.
So basically, they just gave him a really long delay. But doesn't it, so anything the president does that's an official act, they're immune from now, right?
Yes.
So doesn't that mean that, if a president starts a war illegally, they're immune from prosecution?
Yeah, there's actually no way they could start a war illegally because of the way that this mechanism works.
That's insane. So you could order SEAL Team 6 to shoot Trump, and it would be legal.
I mean, he could be impeached, right? That mechanism, they could try to use that mechanism, but other than that, and that mechanism is really weird because it's high crimes and misdemeanors. It's very broad. But
Is it a high crime? If you're immune from it, it's not a crime, right?
True, but there is a rule that you're not allowed to use the military within the United States.
So you'd have to wait for Trump to be abroad, and then you could do it.
I mean, theoretically.
Because we all know that Obama assassinated American citizens that were abroad with drone strikes.
Totally. I mean,
so technically speaking, if Trump went out of the country, Joe Biden could drone strike him, and it would be perfectly legal.
In theory.
That's wild. That's so wild.
The other side of this is there's very specific behavior that's implicated, right? So, and part of that behavior is calling state officials and being like, yo, give me more votes. So since this case got handed down, one of the funniest unexpected outcomes could be Joe Biden uses it. So Donald Trump gets elected and Joe Biden just goes nuts.
Right?
Yeah,
just
protection.
So crazy. There's something wrong with the Supreme Court. We really need to expand the court or impeach some judges or something.
The scary thing about that is, in order to do anything with the judicial system, we'd have to have a constitutional convention, and if that happened, like, all bets are off.
We can add justices with just the Congress and the Senate.
I don't believe so. I think it would require a constitutional convention.
No, because we've changed the number of justices multiple times.
We've had constitutional conventions. So, like the 13th Amendment, the one limiting slavery, the 14th Amendment against treason, like we had constitutional conventions and we changed stuff.
Weird, but because like we've had 13 justices before, and like, how did they do it beforehand?
Well, I mean, they've just been making it up as they go, but we have had, I can see now, we've had constitutional conventions to make these alterations. But, like, I really don't know. I mean, it's because the way it's supposed to work is that the Supreme Court is king. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work. And so the legislative, the president can veto things that the legislature does, and then the legislature can overcome that with 2/3 majority in either one. But the Supreme Court's allowed to just go, hey, you can't do this about anything.
Well, you can override the Supreme Court with 2/3 majority of Congress.
I don't think you can.
No, you can. They've done it before with a couple of different bills. Like as long as you have 3/4 majority, you can do just about whatever you want. Really. Because you can add amendments to the Constitution and get them ratified by the states.
But that's the constitutional convention I'm describing. And when
amendment ratification is not the same thing as a constitutional convention.
The only way to amend is through a constitutional convention, I believe.
The amendments are added through the House and Senate both voting on them, then getting them ratified by the states. And I think 37 of the states have to ratify it for it to go through.
You're right. So if an amendment may be proposed by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress, or if 2/3 of the states request one by a convention called for that purpose, the amendment must then be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures. So yeah, it can come either way, just like you said. You're right. Because I would be terrified of a constitutional convention. When those open, like everything's on the table.
We could end up with because people forget that a constitutional convention is not your congressmen who go, and every state only gets one vote.
Yeah,
it's not good. Not with the numbers we have right now.
Well, I know, and it's such a weird time for leftists like us to be put to the test, right, with Joe Biden, because he's just so obviously. I mean, even if I liked him, he's clearly not capable of doing the job anymore. He won't. Yeah.
I'm really hoping that all the rumors that I see coming out that he's gonna. Did you see that Bill O'Reilly said that he has inside sources that Joe Biden's gonna drop out and are just waiting for the right time?
I have been reading stuff like that. I mean, the interesting question, and you brought this up in one of your videos. I hadn't even thought about this. Is like, you were defending Kamala Harris as the obvious replacement.
Yeah.
But I think that they wouldn't allow that because of her electability.
Yeah, but I think skipping over her, unless you get somebody like Michelle Obama, you're going to piss off every feminist in the party. You're going to piss off half the black people in the party. I mean, you're going to step over a very qualified black woman and put a white old dude in charge. I mean, the optics of that are terrible. Like, because there's no that Kamala Harris isn't qualified.
But did you see how well Gavin Newsom did against Ron DeSantis? Yeah, like
if it was a primary, I would say we would go with Newsom. But the fact that it's gonna if it happens, it'll happen at a convention. If they put up another like old white dude and just step over Kamala Harris, you're gonna piss off a lot of people.
But there's that weird question that's posed by what happened to Hillary Clinton, right? So like 48% of college-educated women voted against Hillary Clinton, and everyone knew abortion, was on the.
Hillary Clinton's a special case. She is a specially hated human. Like, I don't know any like working class human being who has any respect for Hillary Clinton at all.
She's
Like,
pretty
they just don't. Like, I don't like. She seems like one of those people who likes the smell of her own farts.
bad.
Yeah, it's just not. It's not. No, like she was especially bad candidate.
She's always struck me as like seriously sociopathic. Like you can tell she knew her husband was going to cheat. She did not care. That is not why she married him. You know what I mean? Like
Like the last poll I saw had Kamala Harris basically at the same spot as Joe Biden against Trump with a one-on-one. Thing is Joe Biden's trending down. Kamala Harris is flat. So I mean, I would much rather go from flat and try to move up than trending down and trying to move up. You know what I mean?
totally, but like one thing that's interesting is she really hasn't made a name for herself as the vice president. Like usually a vice president undertakes something, and you know they, like we know, not Dan Quayle, but Al Gore was obviously big on the environment. Like they define themselves in some way, but Kamala Harris hasn't done anything that people will recognize her for, really.
Not on the media though. She's actually been in charge of a couple of different programs that have been successful. She helped allocate the funding for the veterans money. She's so I mean, what she gets put in charge of is never going to be headline news, and they do that on purpose because Joe Biden puts her in charge of stupid crap. I mean, Joe Biden tried to put her in charge of the border, like so you just gave her a job you knew she would fail at because that's a failing job.
Totally. But I know that within the parties there's like a pecking order, right? And like there are certain people that get proposed for office because it's their turn. The best one was the guy in 1996. Because it's interesting, right? Like it was Bob Dole. So Bob Dole was super old, and like this is when I mean I don't know if you saw this in my videos, but I went to every Republican National Convention from '96 to 2012. My dad's raised more money for the Republican Party than anyone who's ever lived, and I fell out of. I worked for the party for a long time. My dad explained the party to me, he said that the Christians were going away and that we were becoming libertarian because like I was always pro drugs, pro LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff, and I thought the Republican Party was going to go that direction. And then I saw a video by Noam Chomsky, and I was like, oh my god. But like there's definitely an order of who gets to go next to try to be president, and I wonder if Kamala Harris has enough support within the party elite to.
Yeah, well, another reason I think it'll be her is because everybody forgets that they wanted Kamala Harris before Joe Biden won the primary last time. I watched all the primaries on both sides, always have. And Kamala Harris was like the chosen person. And then Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her in a debate. And she dropped like 25 points in the polls, and we ended up with Joe Biden. But before that, Kamala Harris was like the chosen one. I still think they want her in charge.
I think that they just worry about her electability. I mean, one of the secrets underlying everything is white people's preference for white people, right? It's problematic. Unless you have that super charisma that Barack Obama had, it's difficult. And so she's got the I'm not a white person and she's a woman thing, which is it's because of the way the people in our country view things. It's problematic, you know.
I would agree with the comment there that they're going to wait till after the debate, but the next debate is after the convention. And trying to replace Joe Biden after the convention, unless he dies, I don't know of a legal way to do it.
Why?
Because the delegates are already chosen then.
Have you seen how they're preparing for violence at the convention?
Oh, of course. But, I mean, to be fair, they've been doing that since forever.
They expect this one to be really bad.
Yeah. Well, there'll be pro-Palestine protesters there. There's going to be, I'm sure the Trumpers are going to show up. It's, it'll be ugly.
I mean, what do you think of the tone deafness of the current administration with the Palestine stuff? I mean, it's really apparent that most of their constituents are not cool with it.
I honestly think it's Joe Biden. I think most of the Democrats understand that they're on the losing side of this, but they know that if they go against the head of the administration right now, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot.
No, I mean it's a wild moment in time to be alive.
Yeah. I think most of the Republicans don't really like Trump either. I think they don't. They just are putting up with him because they know if they come out against him, they'll get primaried by some total far-right psychopath and lose their seat.
Well, it was so interesting because so I'm from Orange County, California, and California's been obviously blue for a very long time, but the presidential candidates all come to my town that I grew up in, Newport Beach, to raise money because there's a ton of rich people there. And when Trump first started running, they were setting up Jeb Bush. They were like, it's Jeb's time, and they were all sure. And then I even watched my dad re-register as an independent because of Trump. Like they were really pissed about Donald Trump. I'm surprised that they haven't done more to remove him.
Yeah, and that is a good point. A lot of people who support Israel are a solid Dem voting bloc and have been for a long time.
It's so interesting that they've been able to sustain that for so long when the occupation, is so apparent and the brutality of Israel is so apparent.
It's the number of Zionists in this country is insane. Oh, somebody else just said that too. But oh wow, thanks. Yeah, I think that it's religion. Like, too many people think that Israel needs to fulfill their magical prophecies and bring about their new sky daddy. That, like, it's like, how do you argue with someone who wants the world to end? Like, that's their goal. Every one of these religions is a death cult, and they all want the world to end. It's insane to me. And like, the idea that you would vote for people who, like, openly want the end of the destruction of mankind is just like, why would you want these people in charge of anything?
And I think that their desire for the end of the world causes them to ignore things that could improve the world now. Like,
well, they think it's all part of God's plan. Like, they don't care if we're destroying the environment because that's part of God's plan. They don't care if, like, if a volcano erupts, they're like, well, that's just part of God's plan, and it's the worst thing for all the things we do when we're, like, destroying the environment. Like, they say that every stream in the United States has pharmaceutical drugs in it.
yes.
That's insane. That's not okay.
There was a study, I couldn't believe this. They tested a large number of men's testicles for microplastics, and every single one of them had a significant amount of microplastics. I mean, this is undoubtedly true of you and I too. Like, the way that things are now, it's crazy. Like,
the average American eats a credit card worth of plastic a week. What does the Supreme Court do? They take away the FDA's ability to regulate food.
in that case, Chevron is so wild because the outcome is going to be so unpredictable. Like,
It's going to come to each individual court case, which is going to come down to some judge who can be bribed after the fact.
I mean, yeah, one thing is they're appointed for life, right? So they don't have to worry about getting removed. And unless they're trying to get, like, to the Supreme Court, which many of them aren't now because there's only 2 seats on the Supreme Court that are going to be replaced because everyone's so young now. You know what I mean? But, like, we could see wild outcomes in that. And I've been talking to my lawyer friends about trying to sue the other way and creating a nonprofit that would just start suing the other way all the time. Going, hey, these regulations aren't good enough, actually. And
that's actually kind of a smart idea. Because the thing is like, I think you said in one of your videos, you're going to overwhelm the judiciary. Like, there's not enough judges. There's not enough lawyers. There's not enough. if every corporation starts suing about every regulation, the EPA alone is going to spend billions of dollars just in fighting lawsuits, and the whole time they're in court being appealed, the company's just going to be polluting like crazy.
So you're right, and I wonder about that because so my friend actually, so like I'm an anarchist, right? I became that, but my friends are still big up in the Republican Party, and one of my friends is like Ted Cruz's like campaign manager, and the other one was a big fundraiser for Ron DeSantis. And there's a lot of people in that community who would like to see the government grind to a halt to force a constitutional convention so that they could do crazy shit.
Yeah.
And these aren't like just Republicans. These are people like, like big time fundraisers and stuff. Like,
yeah, that's a terrifying thought if they actually got a convention with the current governors. Not good.
well, it's so interesting to me that the Christians don't undertake to help the homeless more. Like, and I don't understand their justification for that, right? Like, I mean, I feel like don't they help individual homeless people? Like, do they feel no compunction to do that?
What's really crazy is I saw this TikTok where this guy ran the numbers. If every church in America helped 1.2 homeless people, there would be no homeless people in America.
I mean, because their prophet was homeless, essentially, right? Like, I don't know how they live with such cognitive dissonance.
When the pastor drives a BMW past the guy who's hungry on the street.
I follow Joel Osteen on Instagram. You know Joel Osteen? The mega preacher, prosperity gospel guy. He's in Dallas. And when the hurricane hit, or he's in Houston, and when the hurricane hit, he locked his church. He wouldn't let anyone in. He's super rich. It's crazy to me that they don't see the hypocrisy in their own church. Like,
Right.
sometimes I wonder if it's like, is this the group of stupid people? Because there are people with different mental capacities and cognitive capacity. Like, is this just stupid people? Like,
Well, one of the things George Carlin said that I always have to remember is think about how dumb your average person is, and then realize that half of them are dumber than that.
and it's crazy, right? Like,
I agree with Leviathan. It's more lack of access to appropriate education. People who were raised in like super religious communities are taught that education is dangerous and scary and it's of the devil. They're taught that people who know a lot of things are possessed by demons. They literally believe this. I get told at least once a week that I am possessed by a demon in a comment somewhere.
really?
Oh yeah, constant. Like the number of times I get told by God-loving Christians that I'm gonna burn for eternity is just hilarious to me.
Oh,
And I'm like, I read your book. If there's one thing I'm sure of is that even if the like Joshua guy was real wandering around the Middle East, he never said he was sending anybody to burn. That's some shit y'all made up.
I know the Book of Revelations came so much later. I mean, and also, there's no way someone with hair as good as yours could ever be damned. So,
We probably hanging out. But it's wild to me, like that people believe these like, and they've also done studies and shown that people who are raised in religious communities are more likely to believe in factless conspiracy theories. They're more likely to believe in ghosts. They're more likely to believe in all kinds of like nonsensical fairy things because like if you're brought up to believe that supernatural things exist, then you're way more likely to believe in all other supernatural things like demons and fairies and goblins. It's all the same nonsense. But if you're taught your entire life those things are real, then your cognitive brain just teaches you to keep believing that so that you fit in your community. Because people don't realize that like it was dangerous when we were, hunter-gatherers to have thoughts that were wildly different from your community. That would get you killed. So we've evolved to try to stay with the peers that we're around. That's why people who the number one thing I recommend for all religious people, leave the town you grew up in and go move somewhere else for a few years. Not for a vacation. Move to a different place for a few years, like a bigger city. And it will like change your whole worldview. So many people in America die within 50 miles of the place they were born. It's insane.
What frightens me is the question. So, like Leviathan said, that it's a lack of education, but Barry Lane said, mentioned that IQ is about 98, the average IQ, and I always wonder, like, is it true? Like, okay, if you told every kid in the high school, like, you can be Michael Jordan if you work hard enough. You could train yourself to be as good as to be the best sports star ever. We would know that's cruel. Okay, we know that a certain amount of base ability for like playing basketball, like you need a certain level of talent to progress to the pros. It's not just practicing, right? Is intelligence like that? And how limiting is it? Like we have this idea of IQ, and we know 100 is the base. Like, but what's available to someone at 120 that isn't available to someone at 100?
But have you seen the studies on how kids lose IQ as they get older?
No, I haven't actually explained that.
They did a bunch of studies on a bunch of kids, and they gave them all like standardized aptitude tests when they were really young, before they had entered the school system, and they kept giving them tests every year. And they found out that the longer kids spent in the public school system, the lower their IQ got.
God, that's frightening.
Like, I think our public education system is specifically designed to make people dumb.
Well, it doesn't teach very useful stuff. Like and everyone says this. Like, why don't they teach how to pay your taxes? And why isn't that a component of basic education?
Why didn't I know what a credit score was until I was $5,000 in debt when I was 18?
Okay, well, for you and I, what year are you born?
83.
Oh, we're born the same year. Okay. The credit scores didn't come out till like 87 or something?
87 or 89, something like that.
So, and I think for our parents, they just didn't care. They'd all bought their house or whatever by the time, we were born, so they never had to deal with it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, one thing that's always shocking to me as I look back on the rises in the minimum wage, right? And my dad is born in 1940. My dad's born in 1947. Okay. And the minimum wage rose almost every single year until he turned 20. Like it was just something they did regularly because like my grandpa was a night watchman and alcoholic night watchman, and he bought a house. Like he was just a night watchman, and he raised 5 kids. My grandma didn't work, and
You have to do that working at a grocery store. It used to be perfectly acceptable to work at a grocery store your entire life and retire and have a retirement. Like the idea of that now is just like a foreign concept.
we lost touch with, like, when you read the minimum wage act, like the government legislation, it says like, look, a living wage, this is to make sure everyone has a living wage. But by the time you and I were 15, I don't know if you felt this, but like I had the impression that the minimum wage was a starting wage.
Oh yeah, they told everybody that. Like, yeah, I was taught like basically that the minimum wage is what high schoolers make,
Yes.
and that. But that's not true. There's so many people who like work in this country 40 hours a week their whole lives and still make like minimum wage or like $1 more than minimum wage. It's just ridiculous.
No, like Teach said, like we all know our grandparents, like especially the people from what are they're still called the greatest generation, right? Or World War II people.
The greatest generation was World War One.
No, they were the lost generation.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The greatest was the ones who actually fought in World War II, and then the boomers were their kids.
They're their kids.
Silent generation was the ones in between World War One and World War II.
Do you remember when we were called the Echo Boom generation?
Yeah, we were called Generation Y.
Yes, that too. I think that they named the generations to create strife. Like, I think everything they do is to prevent people from noticing what's happening politically and that the government is totally not on your side. They create these divisions between, and I think the generational divide is part of that. Like, it's, I mean, Noam
Oh yeah.
Chomsky, manufacturing consent is all about that.
Oh yeah, that's the whole. Well, they've kind of got it in a perfect place because like the people who talk about a revolution in America say, you've got two different sets. You've got the far right and the far left, but you'll never get those people to talk to each other. And they're the only ones who, if you could get them to work together, could actually overthrow anything.
I know. And I saw
And
it.
it's centered where they just don't pay attention at all.
Well, it's the
No.
people who are doing well enough to not care.
Yep.
Like, most of
Or
the,
just not well enough to be able to pay attention.
exactly.
It's
Like,
like
most
people who are struggling to even, keep their kids fed are not paying attention to what Joe Biden and Donald Trump are doing on a stump speech.
it's my friends do that because obviously I'm an attorney, and a lot of my friends, went to college and grad school, and they're like, "Why do you spend so much time obsessing over this?" And I'm like, "Because, I mean, for me, it's well. Let me ask you, why do you take the time to speak out? I mean, you got a job that demands a ton of you. Like,
Because I, I, at my heart, I'm an optimist. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the fact of the matter is, humans are the coolest shit. Like we are. Like, and I give us a lot of crap because we do a lot of terrible crap and we've done a lot of horrible stuff to each other. But I mean, come on, we landed on the moon. Dolphins didn't land on the moon. Like, uh, I mean, I'm just saying, like, don't get me wrong, I'm an environmentalist. But if it came down to destroying the planet Earth and saving the human race, I would save the human race.
what's your basic political like? If someone was like, "What's your party?"
I would say I'm a transhumanist techno communist.
Oh my God, I love that name. I mean, you're alone in it. I'm sure there's not many people who are that specific, but that name is very cool.
I think we should use technology to make humans better, and we should use the same technology to erase scarcity. And I mean, I think we should have Star Trek.
I always tell people Star Trek is the model.
Yeah, like Star Trek's what I want. Like, I mean, it's how do you not look at the Star Trek world and go, that looks like it works. Everybody's fed, nobody's starving. I mean, uh, it kills me that I can see that we have the technology for everyone to live a decent life. And we choose not to let that happen so that 1% of the population can live like kings above the rest of us. And that's just stupid.
Well, we're leaving a lot of potential on the table, right? Like, forget kindness, right? Forget all that stuff, okay? If we enabled every person to realize their potential, the changes we would see, the amazing discoveries that would occur would be just unreal.
Yeah, I've always said it's like, what if the guy who could figure out the combination between quantum theory and theory of relativity works at a gas station right now and is just too busy to write it down?
That's what I'm saying. So, like,
Like people forget Einstein worked at a patent office, but if he wouldn't have had the time in his spare time to think about like what happens if I'm traveling at the speed of light and I see anything? Because that's what started his whole question that went on his, that created the theory of relativity. But if he had never had the time to sit around and think about that, never would have happened.
and weirdly, that's the argument I have to use with my Republican friends because they don't care about the kindness argument. Like when you're like, look, human decency demands that we force Walmart to stop throwing away the food they can't sell. I mean, that's one of the most egregious and disgusting things you see is like the way supermarkets like when they can't sell something, they throw it away and do things to spoil it to ensure it's like it's
Oh, yeah.
apparent scarcity is false. Like we could take care of that tomorrow if we were properly motivated. But when I'm talking to my conservative, heartless friends, I go like, look, you're leaving potential inventions on the table. Like your quality of life could be improved by some guy who's working at a gas station whose potential can't be realized because he can't pay for his own life right now.
Right? I mean, plus, like, the way our system is set up, it is against your financial incentive to cure a disease if you're a pharmaceutical company. It's bad for business. That that's a stupid system. Like any system that makes it to where it's bad for your business to cure a disease is a system we should not have. Like that's because they make so much money off like chemotherapy and treatments that they don't even look for cures. They look for more treatments, and you can tell it. Look at the nonprofits that they set up. The Cancer Treatment Center of America. Well, I want to go to the Cancer Curing Center of America. Where's that at?
Did you see like Cuba created a vaccine for lung cancer? Like that exists.
And we made it illegal.
Exactly. I actually am. I've been thinking about going. I quit smoking like 2 years ago, and I've been thinking about going to Mexico to get it. You can get it in Mexico, like, and the Europeans
I
have
can't
it.
smoke, but I kind of want to go down there and get the vaccine, and then I'll be like, I don't have to quit smoking now.
Exactly. You can get it in Europe too. Like the Europeans aren't stupid. Like they're willing to embrace. I mean, there was that great moment where the guy from J.P. Morgan or whatever was in that investor call, and he's like, "Is curing a disease really a good business model?" Like where they said it out loud. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's really, but I mean, it's not. It's a bad business model. Like, if you are a capitalist and you own a pharmaceutical company, curing a disease is the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Any disease. Like, that would be the farthest, you wouldn't even be trying it. You would want something that caused more problems that you could give them something else to take to get fix that.
Do you think these people have like sociopathy or narcissistic personality disorder or something? Because I know that I could not do those things. Like no matter how much money you offered me, I would not be able to sleep at night. It's not a matter of like, do I want to do those things? If I did them, the rest of my life would be crap because I'd just be sitting there thinking about all the pain I caused.
I think in a capitalist system, sociopaths and psychopaths rise to the top.
You really see it in lawyering too.
But it's just true. Like someone who doesn't have empathy or even the want to experience actual emotions about other people in a capitalist system, the system is built for you, 100%. Like you stomp on people, you just get your way straight to the top. You'll probably end up a billionaire.
I mean, one of the most interesting things, have you seen how Amazon and Target and stuff are talking about lowering their prices?
Hmm. Yeah, but they're going to lower it to 20 by like 20%, so it'll still be 20% higher than it was 2 years ago. So
I think that they're in trouble. I think that over the past 4 years, a lot of us have developed a willingness to forego purchases. Like the incentive to consume was crushed, and now they are starting to realize that
then
because
they're
you're seeing.
trying to control it.
Yes, like I'm seeing because they do the quarterly earnings reports, and I listen to those and I watch all that kind of stuff. And they've been talking about how not only are big ticket items not getting sold anymore, but like small things. Like people are taking the time to, buy lots of dry beans and rice and, so that they can avoid purchasing, the cooked items and stuff like that. Um, it's what they've done over the last 4 years. First of all, there was no inflation. Okay. Inflation, well,
That was just
inflation,
greed.
yes, it's just greed. Like inflation is supposed to occur when people make a bunch more money and therefore there's a lot more pressure on demand, right? That did not happen. And I think they finally found their limit, but I don't think they're going to be able to undo it because I think a lot of us have become more like savvy.
Yeah. And I've also seen a lot more people are starting to realize that they can do without, like, stupid crap, which I kind of respect. But at the same time, the sad thing is the way capitalism is set up. If Americans stop buying stupid crap, the entire global economy is going to collapse.
Oh, totally. But like, I mean, one of the things that's so interesting is like we could crush the system by like doing everything we can to just purchase less. Like if you could get a significant amount of people to like, you know, buy ingredients rather than finished products and stuff like that. And we just seriously cut consumption. I mean, it wouldn't even have to be that by that much. All of these corporations are run by debt as well. Like they pay out their profits. They don't sit on their profits. They pay them out, and especially through stock buybacks and stuff. So if we were able to convince people to significantly reduce their spending, the whole system would collapse.
But most Americans don't really want the system to collapse because they benefit from it. It's kind of like how a lot of Democrats will be like, well, we should be like Switzerland or Sweden or Denmark. And I'm like, you realize that none of those countries, it's like model exists without the exploitation of the global south. They just don't. Like, they just can't. Like, they only exist because you're exploiting people in underdeveloped countries.
It's like Nestle and slavery, right? Nestle just like all our chocolate relies on slavery. Like
all chocolate is made with slave labor. It's horrific. And they're like, well, we started ethically sourcing it. And it's like, no, you didn't. You started buying it from somebody else who can pretend they ethically source it, but they're getting it from the same plants. Cocoa doesn't grow very many places.
And so, one thing that the demon cake asks, he's a pagan. What happens to me if Project 2025 happens? Well, I think that the Republicans don't realize the unintended consequences of what they're doing. And I think the system is going to fundamentally change over the next few years, whether we engage in some behavior that could collapse it or not. And one thing that gives me a lot of hope is that when you only believe that voting is how to change things, that's terrifying because it's really clear that by voting we can't do very much. But when you realize...
I disagree with that. I think we could, but the problem is getting enough people to actually vote. Like, in the primaries in this country, less than 30% of the electorate actually votes. If you could get 70% of the electorate to show up and vote in their primaries, I mean, we could replace all of Congress in 2 years.
I love the video you made making this point, and I do agree with you. But
getting those people to vote is, I mean, my favorite example is, I'll never forget, when I was young, before they legalized the green stuff in Oregon, it was on the ballot to legalize it. And I was into that stuff at the time, and so were all of my friends. And after it failed by like 4,000 or 5,000 votes. And I went and asked all my friends who partaked in this substance on the regular, and none of them voted for it.
Why do you think that is? Like, one argument I've heard is that politics are made to seem so complex and hopeless that people don't want to engage. What do you think?
I think it's a combination of being told your whole life that your vote doesn't count, wanting to be lazy, and wanting to feel like you know something that nobody else does. It's the same reason I think conspiracy theorists are such a big thing, and flat earthers are such a big thing. It makes them feel special to be in on the knowledge that nobody else is in on. It's the same reason you have religions and cults. I think there's something about like the human brain that you like to feel like you're in on the secret, even if the secret doesn't make any sense.
Well, it gives your life a strange sort of meaning, right? If you're part of the only in-group, however that's defined.
Yeah, whatever the in-group is, if you're the right one and you and your friends are right and everybody else is wrong, you're special. And it doesn't matter. It's the same with religion and cults and the people who believe in the aliens, and to me it's all the same thing.
Well, you're still going to try the congressional thing, right? I've been looking into the campaign and stuff.
If things work out, it's complicated, but I don't want the job, but I feel like somebody needs to run who's not bought and paid for by corporations.
Well, yeah, and I think it's also like an important thing to do, because like obviously we spend a lot of time talking about this, right? Through here on TikTok and stuff like that.
It's also
Developing
one of the things I watch a lot of leftist creators, and at a certain point, I'm just kind of like, well, all right, how long can you keep bitching about it and not step up and try to do something yourself? Because at a certain point, you're just kind of being a whiny bitch and not trying to fix anything.
so the agitator group is important, right? Like you know the Rathbone guy?
Yeah.
Okay, like he's an agitator and he knows he is. So like he is just trying to explain things to people and change people's minds. But there needs to be those of us who actually go out and try to interact meaningfully with the political system, and that's why I hope you find the ability to do this because I am totally down to help you. I've already looked into the finance stuff for the campaigns and all that. I'm starting to build outline because that's what I did in law school, like an outline on how we need to do this because it would just be so awesome. And I mean, even if you don't win, you would bring attention to the issues you care about, and you've spent so much time understanding this stuff. There's a large number of people who would be like edified by your campaign. You know, they would learn from it.
Like Leviathan said, it is kind of scary because the right wing people are nuts, and yeah, it's just about time one of them finds my house.
Well, that we deal with that. We'd find a way to deal with it. I mean,
You know, Second Amendment and all that, right?
I grew up in California, so I spent my whole life in a like well, I watched it turn blue, which was interesting. But now I'm in Nevada and it's very purple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
North Carolina, it's very red.
is it? I know I haven't looked into it.
Like technically, it's weird because we have like a blue governor and the most far right psycho Christian lieutenant governor you've ever heard of. Like, doesn't think women should have the right to vote. Like, yeah, and he's running for governor, so if he wins in North Carolina, it's going to be really bad if he wins. So here's hoping he loses. But like, my congressman is David Rouser, and he's a far right Trump humper. He's just worthless. And I'm really pissed off because the guy running against him is named Marlando Pridgen, and he seems like a decent guy. He also seems like he's not trying to win at all. He has a Facebook, hasn't made a post. He has an Instagram, hasn't made a single post. It's like you're on the Democrat ticket and you're not doing anything. Like there's no events, there's no nothing. It's just like he put his name on the ballot, and I'm confused.
One thing I worry about with Biden is I know the Democrats like really fundraise well when the executive is held by a Republican. And sometimes I think they don't care if he loses. They're like, look, we'll make a bunch of money if Joe Biden loses and Trump gets elected. We'll be able to terrify everyone into donating to us.
Yeah, they think that way, and they're right, but it's so stupid. Like, they need to get politics, the money out of the politics. Like, which is one of those things that kills me, because, like, did you see that Ro Khanna's bill?
Yeah.
That, okay, Ro Khanna introduced a bill to make it illegal for lobbyists to become, or for congressmen to become lobbyists. Make it illegal for congressmen to take PAC money. Made it illegal for congressmen to own stocks, or for their families to buy and sell stocks. And like two other things that were all going to get the money out of Congress. And of course, he got like one co-sponsor. I think it was AOC.
Boy, it's funny because my dad is literally a lobbyist. I mean, that's what he does. And I remember one of his partners expressing to me how depressed she was that she said when there are votes, the candidates who she helps elect would call and be like, did these people donate? Like she would call as the vote was going on. And I could tell she was depressed about it, but like it was her life now. Which is a very nice house and, you know.
Well, and it becomes a revolving door. Yeah, like, and our media is so terrible because we had a decent media that when Ro Khanna introduced that bill, it would have been the talk of all the news media, and we'd have had it passed by now because the people would have pressured Congress into passing it. But because our media doesn't even talk about bills unless it's like something they can, get some headlines out of, they don't. they don't want, Congress not accepting money because half of them are paying Congress.
Well, yeah, Noam Chomsky argues that like they literally just avoid leftist causes because they don't like they're attractive, right? Like, and they know that if they gave too much attention to them, it would spur. That's why I think TikTok is getting taken down, right? Because I've never seen leftist positions grow so much. Like I've never interacted on social media very meaningfully, and then I was like checking out this app and I was seeing all these leftists like articulating positions that I liked and getting like actual likes for them. Like people were really paying attention and I was like, this app is amazing. Like
Yeah, I mean, like, when I started making TikToks, I was just like, I'm just gonna complain at my phone and see what happens. And like, I don't write scripts or do anything like that. I literally like, I'm at work and I listen to like different podcasts and news and stuff all day long. And then when something pisses me off, I go outside and smoke a cigarette and make a video about it.
I literally am the same way. Like I wrote something once that I said, and I shared a speech that I thought was really important that described the importance of trying to unleash the power of human creativity by, unshackling us from the constant desire to accumulate wealth. But like, other than that, like, it's just I'm just so shocked. Like when I found your account and I realized, like, wow, like there's like 70,000 people following this person. And I mean, when we were younger, because we're the same age, articulating these political positions when we were younger would have been crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like actual communists and stuff, actual anarchists, like no one would have ever.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, if you were a communist, you were authoritarian. You might as well have been a Yahtzee. And if you were an anarchist, you just wanted to burn the entire country to the ground. And this people are starting to slowly actually, understand that these ideologies are not that at all.
No, the fact you can share them here is what shocked me so much. Like, I've just never seen another like our media never talks about this stuff seriously. They're part of that process that demonizes any exploration of other political ideologies that aren't, essentially like liberal or center or far right.
I think that's why they're afraid of TikTok. Because TikTok's not only decentralizing information, the way that we get media and stuff, but they're decentralizing advertising. They're breaking the advertising blocks because the way TikTok works, you can get a regular person advertising a product that they believe in, and if you have 10,000 of those people who all sell 20 products, you're going to make way more money than if you give $1 million to some TV corporation.
It's actually giving us what we want. Like, did you
Yeah.
see how
And if you think
Instagram? What?
then that's why the government's terrified.
Did you see how Instagram put that political filter on and automatically checked it for you?
It's ridiculous.
Like four
And
months. Oh, go on.
which is crazy because like my entire For You page is politics and dog videos. I'm not gonna lie, I like a lot of dog videos because they just make me smile. So like it's like politics, 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 capitalism, socialism. Oh, a cute dog. Politics, politics. And I don't even have an Instagram. But like when I go through my YouTube, it's all I click is politics videos, really. But I still get all this other junk thrown in there that they're just trying to sell me, basically. And TikTok doesn't really do that.
No, no. I mean, when I noticed um, that basically, like Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Like all of our news is propaganda. It's not news, and the way that they do that is not just the reporting. It's what they choose to report on. So, like when the UAW strike was going on a couple of years ago, they never talked about it. When the railroad workers wanted to go on strike in 2020 and Joe Biden prevented them from doing so using his executive power, they just didn't talk about it. Whereas in Europe, like this would be the main topic. Like you watch France go on general strike like once every 2 years, and I'm like, why can't? That's like my fantasy is strike.
Well, the UAW is pulling for it. Well, the head of the UAW wants a general strike in 2028.
They're technically illegal.
Yeah, but if a strike was legal, it wouldn't be dangerous.
Oh yeah, I mean, and if enough people do it, they can't enforce it. Like that's the other thing. The mechanisms of law enforcement. The other thing that's like one thing I hope the Republicans do is as they so Jeff Bezos and Amazon is suing the National Labor Relations Board and arguing it's unconstitutional, right? Because one of their factories or one of their warehouses unionized. If the Republicans destroyed unions, they would turn the police on them.
Yeah, they would make a caveat for the police. I put, you know, they would. They would accept police unions. They would straight up. They would destroy all other unions and leave the police unions intact. You know they would. You know they would. And they would leave. They'd probably leave the oil unions intact too, just because they don't want to fuck with that money.
I've always wondered why the police enforce so aggressively against strikes. There was one up the street from me, and I was watching the police like harass them. And it was nurses, you know what I mean? It was like nurses and doctors on strike, and I was like, why do they care so much? Like, they do have discretion on what they enforce. Like,
It's. I consider all cops class traitors. Like they just are. Like they knowingly take a job where their entire job is going to be to harass and ticket their fellow man. Like you can say that they took it to like protect the peace or whatever, but that's not what cops do by the numbers. They don't. They just don't. And you can prove it. You can be the most law-abiding citizen ever, and if a cop's lights turn on behind you when you're driving down the road, you get nervous. I don't care how good you think you are. And if cops were good, you wouldn't have that feeling. You'd be like, oh, that's all right, I wonder what he wants. But it doesn't matter. You could be the most legal, saintly person ever who's never even had an evil thought in your mind. And when the cops' lights come on behind you, your heart starts pounding and you're afraid. And that's just wrong. Like, that just shows you that they're not a good organization. Like,
I've fantasized about joining the police and trying to change them from the inside. I've been like, can't we get enough leftists to join the police? Because they can enforce what they can place their efforts where they want to. Who tells them what to do? Nobody.
but the problem is, it's just like all the other cults and things we were talking about. By the time you go through the training and all that, and you're part of the peer group, and then when one of your peer groups starts doing something crazy, even if you're a good person, you will either get kicked out of the police force, that happens all the time, or if you try to actually like make a difference, they'll sandbag you and you'll be writing parking tickets the rest of your career.
You'd have to get a significant number of people like us to join simultaneously, right?
Yeah. And the problem with that system is, how do you do that without the ones who are already in there like framing you for whatever? And because corrupt cops are going to do corrupt cop crap, you know what I mean? And the new young force guy who came in with all these all this ideology of being a good cop is just going to get destroyed by the system.
I mean, one
Unless
advantage.
that's joined at once.
What'd you say? A lot of us.
Yeah, if you get enough, if you could overwhelm the police force with enough, but they're not going to hire enough at a time to make it possible. Because you'd have to hire at least 30% of the workforce. So you'd have to fire 30% of the cops and replace them.
It would have to be a long-term process, right? Like we'd have to have 100 people or 300 people applying every year for 10 years, But the other thing is that IQ barrier.
I feel like just having the authority over others kind of makes you a bad person eventually.
Yeah, the power corrupts thing. Well, I mean, did you see the article about the IQ limitation for police?
Yeah. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're too smart, you can't. Yeah, it's just wild to me. You'd think you'd want the smartest and the best and the brightest. Isn't that what they say? They're like, no, we specifically do not want the brightest.
Yeah, you're giving them the guns, right? Wouldn't you want only smart people to have the right to use violence?
You would think. Well, and it's also with all the non-violent weapons we have now, like tasers and have you seen the bolo launchers?
Yes.
You just tie a dude up at 50 yards. Why do you need a gun? Unless the guy has a gun and is shooting at you, you have 30 different unarmed, like non-lethal ways of taking somebody down.
But I mean, I always love thinking about ways to undermine the system, right? That don't require voting because voting is hard to motivate people to do. That was one of them. Obviously, like the just limitation on consumption. Like, I wish we could just get a ton of creators on TikTok to be like, hey, only buy what you need to for 6 months. Because that would be enough to screw every single corporation.
Oh
And
yeah,
like,
completely.
you're a chef, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could instruct people on how to just use basic ingredients to make food so that they could stop buying, nearly finished products at the grocery store. I mean, doing that.
One thing I wish we could bring back is communal eating.
Oh
Like
God, no.
I don't really know my neighbors like I should, and I need to get better about this. But like I think about the fact that I live in an apartment complex. If every night we all threw in $3, we could all eat amazing food, like the whole apartment complex, for like $3 a person. Because the more you cook for, the cheaper food gets.
Well, and also there's
Like
just
for me to cook for two people costs like $30, $40, but for me to cook for 10 people costs like $60.
that would be obviously amazing in establishing community. Like, I feel like we're all too isolated.
Right?
Like, I don't know
We're
my
too
neighbors either.
individualized.
What?
We're all too individualized. Like, but I think it can do so. Like the other day, I was down at the pool at my apartment complex, and this was on uh, whatever the last holiday that was on a Monday was. But it was Memorial Day. But there was a whole bunch of kids wandering around the pool and being idiots playing and everything, right? So I was like, well, screw it. I just went to Walmart and bought like a big pack of hot dogs and hamburgers, and I just went down and I cooked hot dogs for everybody there because there's like these grills set up right at the pool, and I just gave hot dogs away to people all day. Like I sat there for like 3 hours cooking hot dogs and just giving them to people, and it was so like community building that like I wish I could afford to do that all the time because like I feel like you could just food's one of those things that brings people together. Like before I started feeding people, everybody was like like off in little circles of like their little group of friends. And as soon as I started offering free food to everybody at the pool, it came like a party where everybody was kind of in the same space, if that makes sense.
Well, and it would be something to counteract the isolation. Like, I really want to use the nonprofit system to institute ideas like this because, first of all, I know no one likes to be as isolated as we are right now, and they just struggle to overcome it because, like you said, there's not as many available communal experiences like communal eating. Um,
Yeah, the main thing I gripe about us atheists, which is kind of sad to say, is we need a church.
yes.
Not like an actual place to like go pray or whatever, obviously, but a place where we can meet once a week and hang out and sing songs together and like do all of the community building things that churches do. Because when you sing songs and dance and have those community organizations, it makes you I don't know. It's like when you go to a concert, it puts you all on the same page, and you have like that energy of a communal binding that churches have, and we don't have that in the secular community, and we need to figure something out for it because it is the community part of it is good, even if the fairy tales they're teaching aren't.
Well, and I always fantasize about doing this, and then like I have that like creating nonprofits to express these ideas because I know with GoFundMe and stuff like that, it wouldn't be that hard. You know what I mean?
Right?
Like, people are into these ideas and do desire opportunities to build relationships with other people that aren't awkward. You know what I mean? Like, where it's expected that, like, yes, I don't know most of the people here, and so I'm going to be meeting new people. Like, the conversations are going to be introductory. We're all very anxious about that. I feel like we worry about being judged by our fellow man. And I feel like that's part of what social media is about, with people who spend a lot of time trying to make themselves and their lives appear more attractive. It's designed to make the rest of us feel as though we're not living up to it, who would want to meet us, whatever. But creating situations in which the fact that you are a stranger to most people, and that's okay, would change our quality of life so radically.
Oh yeah, and like he said, farmer markets are good for this. That's true, but I think we need somewhere where it's free, where there's not an expectation that you have to purchase
Yes.
and hang out and have community, and it doesn't cost you anything.
That's
That's
why you,
the churches have. It's because their congregation gives them donations all the time. That like they have the resources to provide coffee and simple things like that. That people can stand around and have conversations and build that community.
well, having and all you're describing is a unifying purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we tend to think about that politically, like what if I started a group for anarchists? But that sort of thing is limiting, because people are intimidated by politics, and they're certainly intimidated by the names that are associated with leftist ideals. But like, making it as simple as community eating and articulating that everyone is going to be strangers, that's such a good idea. Like, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, and it like it's not hard to cook for. Like I said, the more people who are involved, the easier the cooking becomes, which is really counterproductive. It seems like, but it's not. Like it's like anything else. The more you're manufacturing of it, the easier the manufacturing and the cheaper of it becomes. It's the same with food. Like it's way easier for me to cook 5 whole racks of ribs and get it all done at the same time than it is for me to like cook a rack for 2 people. 'Cause I'm gonna make the same mess.
Well, yeah, and call to roots, like it's the same thing. Bringing music, like coming, encouraging people to bring their forms of artistic expression and not making it a purchasing thing. You know, um,
Yeah, if you can get local bands to play, like we need something like that on the same scale that churches exist, where you have one in your community.
I believe your idea of just having regular sit down eating is the best way, because there's just no expectation, and people would be so shocked to discover, like, well, what are you doing? Oh, I have this nonprofit that allows me to just put on these meals. We do it once a week. Come by whenever you want. That's actually, because when you read about how the union movement formed in the 1930s, it was through these communal things. Those people were so busted up and poor that they had to work together. The system had failed them, and they needed to rely on each other.
If you could fund it, a good way to do it, and you might have to look into the legal implications, but if you could fund a nonprofit food truck, you could just pull up to parks and do it.
Well, and that would not be hard. It would be easy.
Just pull up to the park and be like, free burgers and hot dogs. You know what I mean? And then once they're there, then you start talking to them about communism.
Well, yeah, you just allow them to articulate. Well, I think it would come up naturally, because people would express the ways that this modern world are crushing them to each other. I mean, if you got people together, they would all express their discontent with the system, and then that would naturally lead to, a willingness to embrace ideologies that they've been intimidated away from.
Yeah. But yeah, I think if you could fund like a food truck, you could just pull up to any park and do it, right?
Yes.
Just be like, just sign free burgers and hot dogs.
Yeah. You'd have to name it something, or really articulate that you expect everyone there to be strangers, because so many of us are afraid of meeting strangers now, like afraid of how we'll be perceived. Like you could call it a stranger's dinner or stranger dinner, like,
Yeah.
and just make it about, make people comfortable with the fact that, yeah, you don't know anyone here, me neither.
Right? Yeah, that's the idea, is that you get to know people.
Yeah, I mean, and that would be and then them just sharing their common experience of reality would allow for so much growth. Yeah, you would just have to get a nonprofit and you would have to get insurance,
Yeah.
obviously, in case. But like through GoFundMe, I think a lot of people desire this. Like, you really see it like on dating apps and stuff like that. Like people are so unhappy with these like individualized selecting other people's systems. Um, it would just have to be an event that was, where people expected adaptation.
Yeah. What if you? I mean, like if you started with a food truck, you could advertise like where you were gonna be, like on TikTok and things like that.
Yeah,
But it'd be better, like 20 of them going to different parts of the country. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, you would just basically need to find people like you who can do the
Yeah.
cooking. I mean,
Know how to
what-
cook. Well, and especially if you started making, if you didn't do burgers and dogs, you could do like mass food. You could do like barbecue pork. I mean, that's just barbecuing a bunch of pork shoulders, and then you just kind of rip it apart and put it on a bun. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Or there's a lot of like mass-produced foods like that that you could.
I mean, just
Problem-
the
Or like sloppy joes. I mean, you could make sloppy joes for 20 people for $50 probably.
I mean, and you just do a different meal every week, have some interesting theme. Like, oh my God, if you did that leading up to a run for Congress, that would be the greatest way for you to, greatest identity ever to begin.
Yeah. I wonder how much a food truck costs.
Well, I mean, once you articulated the idea, I think people would get on. I mean, GoFundMe makes this kind of stuff so much easier now.
And like she just said, if you could find a farmer to get all your stuff from, you could save a lot of money. Get it directly from the.
Yeah, I mean that too, and it would be such a good format for helping people become comfortable with political ideologies that are currently, demonized.
And I'd be honest, I'd be a lot happier cooking food for people for free than getting paid for it, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah,
like when I was cooking all those hot dogs for those kids, I was having a blast. And then I think like I go to work 14 hours a day and hate it.
yeah. One of my oldest friends went to the Culinary Institute of America, and he wanted to cook, and he started trying to work at the Chevron star restaurants, and apparently it was just so brutal.
Yeah.
Is it? I've heard being a cook is pretty brutal.
Yeah, well, it's extremely stressful. Like it doesn't seem like it would be, but it's very high paced and there's a lot to do and you have to do it all right every time. And it's 100+ degrees usually and everybody's mad, screaming at each other, and then somebody drops a plate on the ground and shatters and everybody wants to murder everybody. So it's fun.
But it's such a great setting. I mean, because, and you see it here on TikTok, you see a lot of people expressing discontent with the system. The problem is getting them from TikTok into local groups.
Yeah. If we could get that's why I said us atheists we need a communal place where people can come together and sing songs and eat food. And food to me is like the breakthrough thing because you get humans eating. And it's the greatest icebreaker for any situation. It just is, because it puts us in a comfortable setting. Our brains are wired that way. We're like, food is good, so my brain is happy, so I'm more likely to be talkative and happy.
Yeah, it's way better than groups like AA and NA, right?
And I think about how the Black Panthers spread so far when they were giving away free breakfast to kids, and that was the thing that really scared the capitalists because they were teaching kids about communism and socialism and other political ideologies
while they were feeding them breakfast, and that was a dangerous combination for the capitalists.
Well, yeah, because it's dangerous for the government broadly because if people need to rely on organizations that are unrelated to the government, all of a sudden the government begins to seem more superfluous, right? And I mean, that's one of the things I wonder about with what the Republicans are doing is like as they make it so that, it's very clear you cannot rely on the government for anything. It's only a matter of time before people band together to begin, trying to deal with the issues that everybody is suffering from. And I mean, it's just difficult to get from TikTok to the real world because TikTok is the only place where I see people have the ability to truly, your For You page changes to reflect the things that you're interested in and the ideas that you're trying to pursue. And so, people get funneled into these ideas that they never thought that they'd be able to, take seriously.
Yeah. But I don't know. After this, I might start looking into a food truck and nonprofit, see exactly like how you could run something like that. Because like if I could just like cook free food for people and drive to a different park and give away free food every day, I would think I would thoroughly enjoy life.
Well, I can just, dude. It would take no time for me to file the corporate documents for a nonprofit in your state. Like,
I think you're froze.
Oh, am I back? Hello? You're still fine. Am I?
Yeah, I think your video froze for a second there.
Is it good now? Hold on.
Did you lose your internet?
No. Can you? You're still coming through, and I'm seeing everything.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, is it good?
Yeah.
It would take me no time
Well,
at
it
all
was.
to create a nonprofit for you in North Carolina, and then look into the insurance stuff of this. This would take a day.
That's crazy. So
And
then I just needed money for a truck.
Well, then you just use GoFundMe for it. I mean, it's I've been trying to use my, lawyerness to help people. I do a bunch of pro bono work representing abused kids. So kids who get taken.
Amazing.
It's great, but like this is what I really want to use it for is helping, helping to create the community building, enterprises that could bring people together and realize like, we can't rely on the government, but there are people who are willing to step up to, become a source of support. Like, it'd be amazing.
Yeah. And I think there's no laws against like giving food out at a park that I can think of. Depending on where you're at.
I could figure all that out for you. You just have to help me find a chef in Las Vegas.
Oh, that shouldn't be too hard, actually.
Who's interested in doing this too?
Yeah, like I'll bet you that wouldn't be too hard, really. Like any good kitchen manager could probably do it. You just have to find one who's not a capitalist, but I mean it's Vegas, it can't be that hard.
It's a strange place.
And that's the thing is, if I started one, as soon as I'd start making TikToks from inside the truck, and then I'd just get other chefs who liked the idea. I'll bet we could, it'd spread fast.
Yeah, it's just a community building exercise. Like,
yeah.
And there's so many people who are struggling with the exact same thing. Like rent is ridiculous. The price of food has been ridiculous ever since this inflation has occurred, where they're just trying to gouge everyone in every single way that they can. And one thing I hate is that I've started viewing almost everything as a scam. Like,
Right?
yeah. Like,
And that's one of the reasons I'd say I want it to be something that's free, so that there's no people aren't trying to say, hey, we just got somebody who's a 10-year food manager in Texas willing to help or host. Say,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in my industry who I think would be down to do this. Like, if they could just, sustain their livelihood doing it.
And I mean, you can get paid through a nonprofit. I mean, the thing is, there's, oh God, I could look into the foundations who do grants. Like Jeff Bezos's wife is like giving away a large portion of her money, like a very large portion to ideas like this. And I would just have to apply for the grants, which wouldn't, like it's where I would like to put my energy. Because it's I feel like community building is like the next step, and I've been wondering how we can go from this app to that, because the app has allowed us to build a community of leftists who do care and want to get involved in, you know, creating some sort of organization that, helps all of the people who are suffering, because the suffering is so apparent right now.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. And I actually feel like if you could just give people like a place where once a week they could get a free meal and hang out with some people, the community building will take care of itself.
Yeah, get guitarists to come play, like encourage people to come express themselves artistically at these things. Like, I have no doubt there would be pushback from the capitalists, but at the end of the day, like that's why you have lawyers help.
Yeah, the capitalists are definitely good, especially once it started taking off. That's when you'd have the real problems when the capitalists show up. But I do think it could work, and you could take donations for people who could afford to food. You just have like a donation box for buy the next week's food.
Well, and I actually have access to a lot of wealthy liberal donors who are. It's been interesting. Someone tried to push me to create an event for Joe Biden, like a big fundraising event, and I told him, because it was true of all the wealthy liberals I know, they're very pissed about Israel, and he didn't even want to hear it. I was like, "Are you guys going to do anything to try to change your position on this?" Because the kind of people who are a part of the left, they're not a big fan of killing.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of like we're the anti unaliving people thing.
It's crazy that that's become a radical position now.
Did you see the song that Weird Al Yankovic just put on?
Yes.
I one of the opening line of it was so perfect because he said, "End asylum." Like, what's it mean when a policy has both names beside it? And I was just like, facts.
He even talked about the minimum wage. So that's the thing I'm the most pissed about, right? I hate how people are being ground down by poverty. Like, it drives me nuts. And he brought it up, like, and that's the thing. There's guys like him who have money who would support this kind of idea. That's just community building exercise based on just love of our fellow humans.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think we need to get back to. It's like I said, I still try to believe that humans are awesome. We just get sidetracked a lot.
Well, Noam Chomsky says a lot of negative stuff, right? Like if you watch his videos, he's talking about all of the worst things that happened. But when asked directly, he has said this, and I love it: optimism is the only rational position.
It is.
It is.
Because otherwise, you just have to unalive yourself. That's the only option.
I know, and
I always try to tell people, like, you have to look at the arc of human history. 500 years ago, life was a whole lot worse than it is today. Like, in every aspect. More people can read and write today, less people are starving, more people have housing, more people have electricity. Every single aspect of life is better today than it was 500 years ago. Now, yes, we're going to have ups and downs and things like that, but I have to believe that in another 500 years, it's going to be better.
So he says that too. The arc of human history is towards the good, right?
Yeah,
it's very slow.
It's not a straight arc.
No. And I mean, one thing, I really think that the changes that we've seen, especially the Chevron one, So the counter argument to the Chevron, Chevron being overruled being bad is this. Since the executive agencies were created, the presidents have been appointed, or the people who are selected for president, they are picked, knowing that they get to appoint people to those agencies, right? And one of the worst examples is Louis DeJoy. Like Louis DeJoy is trying to destroy the post office so that it can be privatized, and Trump was able to do that. And now that Chevron has been destroyed, their ability to control regulation through presidential appointments has also been destroyed. Now, the counter argument to that is obviously like, well, but can we rely on the judiciary to do a good job with this? Especially now that gratuity. Did you read how that opinion worked? It was so crazy.
Yeah,
They
you
said
get the bribe as long as you didn't agree to it before you ruled.
it's not a bribe. They used this word math that's so crazy. They're like, it's a gratuity. If it comes afterward, it's a gratuity.
It's wild. I was like, wait, so as long as you didn't make the agreement, if they pay you afterwards, is it? This was just Clarence Thomas making sure he's fine with all his gifts and shit like that.
Did you see when Samuel L. Jackson called him Uncle Tom?
Based.
That was one of my favorite moments. Like, it was so
Crazy.
apparent. I mean, the crazy thing too. Have you seen the attack on no fault divorce?
Yeah, that's wild to me too. Like, how are there women who vote for the Republicans at this point? Like, do you not know what no fault divorce is, or do you just okay it with being property? I don't understand.
Dude,
Right.
like, women are really like in trouble. Like, there was a crazy bill about preventing them from getting bank accounts. I gotta find that. It's this. They want to like. They're destroying women's rights, and the way that they're doing it is they're trying to say like the family is a unit, and so you don't need two bank accounts. Oh, it was so interesting.
They're saying the same thing about voting. The family should get one vote, which means the man should get one vote. It's the most ridiculous thing.
That was the thing that blew my mind in the 2016 election when I saw that 48% of college-educated women voted for Trump. I was like, really? Like, do you guys hate Hillary? I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons to dislike Hillary Clinton, right? But that was a dangerous move.
Yeah, that is wild.
But I do love the best way to predict the health of a social group is to see the ratio of men to women. And for the Christians, there used to be like 1.5 women for every man until 2014. And finally that collapsed. And there are less women than men in that group. And that means that they are doomed. Like,
They're the fastest growing group of atheists too, which gives me hope in the future.
right? Like,
Because for a long time there were like no women atheists. Like they just were not a thing. And finally they're starting to come out of the woodwork.
well, it's strange, like, because when you look at the other democracies, atheism isn't even a radical position. Like, Europe doesn't have this like crazy religiosity that we have for some reason.
So it's a very much so a right wing American thing.
It's so interesting. Sometimes I think that like we're this comedy for the aliens. Like we just look like such a mess. You know what I mean? Like,
But at the same time, we don't have any cultures to compare us to. The aliens could be even crazier.
I know.
I always think is like, what if aliens are some like insect race that has like 10,000 eggs and they regularly just murk like 9,900 of their kids?
I know. We can't even imagine.
Regular life, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not talking about like abortions. I'm talking like they just like wait for them to be born and pick out the ones they like and then murk the rest of them. Like, so trying to judge alien cultures is just like we can't even do a good job of other human cultures.
The one way that I preserve my own sanity and keep myself from getting depressed is trying to imagine that there's a group that is laughing at us from some perspective, like that is way more rational and kind, and they are just watching us, and they're like, look at the humans, like they're undoing the abortion stuff again, like look at them go crazy, look at them go nuts, like.
Like, where's the TV show for the aliens?
I mean, it would be fun because, like, my position is that we should be trying to fight back against the indifference of reality. Like, reality is indifferent to us. And so, like, a comet could hit us, whatever, volcanoes, and that's the true risk. Like, not pleasing God, but dealing with the fact that, like, look, crazy shit happens in the universe because, like, it's not paying attention to us, and we should do everything that we can to prevent the cruelty of that indifference from harming too many of us. It's us against the indifference.
It's like when people try to always tell me, life's not fair. I'm like, well, yeah, but shouldn't we try to make it as fair as we can? Agreed, it's not. But we could try and make it as fair as possible instead of just be like, well, the rich are just born rich and they get to stay rich, and the poor are just born poor and they get to stay poor. Like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we made this whole system up. We can make up a new one.
Well, and also, like, I always wonder with billionaires, like, at a certain point, like, you can't improve your life anymore. Like, when you have $1 billion, your access to resources, it's not going to improve very much at $2 billion. Like,
one thing, I think it's in Tao Te Ching that I've always tried to remember is he said that the only person who can ever have enough is one who knows what enough is.
That book is like my entire spirituality.
Tao Te Ching is, if I was going to pick a religious philosophy, that's about the one that's the best, even though it's not really a religion so much as it's just a bunch of philosophical teachings to me. Like, there's no supernatural aspect to it so much. And the teachings are very good. Like, it's very good, much so like people should just take care of each other, and the wise man should think before he speaks, and, it's a very good book.
No, it's one of the greatest lines in it for me was, it basically, I don't remember the exact line, I'm paraphrasing, but it says, without evil, good would be unremarkable.
Yes. It's just yeah, it's like it said, it's a wild read, especially, and it's a quick read. The book's like this big. You can read it an hour.
Yeah, the book on tape is an hour and 15 minutes. Like, it's amazing.
But I think I'm gonna get off here and go to sleep. But this was fun. We should definitely do this again next week.
Yeah, let's just do it again next week. Like, we went way longer than I thought we were gonna. I never got bored.
Yeah, it was good. Appreciate everybody for watching, and thanks for all the gifts you guys have sent. That's crazy. Yeah, we'll do this again next week and try to make this a regular thing.
Yeah, you and I will talk about this food truck thing. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming out.
Sleep well, buddy.